With the Gators, I got to be honest with you. This is 100% kind of how I was leaning here leading up to spring practice in Gainesville. We know Billy Napier, all this hype, all this anticipation. He's killing it with hiring these coaches. He's killing it in the recruiting trail. He got Emory Jones to come back, for God's sakes. Of course, Emory Jones is already in the portal. But, that just spoke a lot to me of the character and just the players buying in. Because we all knew Emory Jones was done at Florida. What the hell is he doing back? The fans didn't want him back, but he still came back. What a salesman Billy Napier must be. We had Zach Goodall on the show last week. If you missed it, go back and watch that. 200 staffers on staff here in Gainesville to build this thing the right way. I'm buying into the hype. And then I hear these comments from Billy Napier, and I'm pumping the brakes big time because, we'll get to Kirby Smart here in just a moment, and maybe it was unfair. Maybe I'm putting the cart in front of the horse here, but a lot of comments here from Billy Napier. Basically, we're trying to teach you guys the basics. It's about effort. It's about physicality. And, it's a lot of install day one stuff, which it should be in his first spring camp. I'm not saying that, this is a bad sign by any means, but you combine this with the rough schedule to come out the gate, and I just think there's going to be some bumps in the road early for the Florida Gators. So, let's kick it over to Billy Napier real quick on his initial thoughts after a couple spring practices. And, he just really emphasizes the fact that this is a developmental period. This is the best time to be a football player. If you want to grow, if you want to buy in, if you want to become, they want to get back to that Gator standard. It all starts here in spring practice.
I think that there's no lack of effort. There's no fear when it comes to that, in my opinion. It's one thing to be physical. It's another to be fundamentally sound, if that makes sense, right? So I think right now we have effort, we have physicality, but it's how we do it, right? I think ultimately there is some conceptual and strategy part of this game, but you have to do the very simple things really well. You've got to block and tackle, you've got to throw and catch, you've got to cover kicks. I think the basics, do the simple things really well, right? I think that's how we've played really good football in the past. We got a ways to go with this team to get there. Yeah, I think the quarterbacks as a whole, this is a developmental game, right? I think that I think it's important to understand that we do a lot more practice than we do play, right, when it comes to football. So this is where you learn, right? This is where you develop as a player, right? And regardless of your experience level, this is where you get your first experience, right? And we like to think as a staff that we're replicating the game. I think that's your job as a coach, right, is to replicate the game for the players on the practice field. And, that's our job as teachers, right? That's our jobs in terms of the way we approach practice, the way we meet, the way we walk through, the way we work in individual and group drills and then translate that to team. We're 4 days in. We're moving our way through the field zones. We're moving our way through the downs and distances. We'll scrimmage practice 8. So, we're about halfway through here in terms of the whole picture. And I think that reality is this is where you get the most experience as a football player.
So, again, I'm not sitting here hitting the panic button, but, if you're being honest, you listen to what Billy Napier's saying here, you got a long way to go to catch up to Georgia. And make no mistake, that shouldn't be the expectation right now, but that is the goal in Gainesville right now. Long, long way to go. And we all know it starts with the quarterback position with Emory Jones gone. Anthony Richardson presumed going to be the starting quarterback. But don't forget Ohio State transfer Jack Miller. God forbid something happens to Anthony Richardson. He gets hurt, which is very unlikely during a camp scenario or during the offseason. But, hell, this is a guy that's gotten hurt dancing before. So, you can't completely rule it out either. Florida's given themselves a nice insurance option, and that's before we get to Carlos Del Rio and Jalen Kitna, of course, I believe that's the son of John Kitna, former NFL quarterback. So, I mean, they have got, I wouldn't necessarily call it a loaded quarterback room due to the inexperience, but they have got plenty of arms down there. They need to get these guys repetition. So, not a big deal, in my opinion, that Emory Jones is no longer part of the program, because we got to get Anthony Richardson up to speed, potentially get Jack Miller up to speed. If it's obviously more than likely going to be one of those two guys. Let's kick it over to Billy Napier on, an early read on the quarterbacks, how the installation progress, even that is a little bit, the quarterbacks are swimming as you'd expect. And then, he really goes out of his way here to praise Jack Miller, the Ohio State transfer. And now that Emory's gone, they may have been in a really tough situation when it comes to lacking experience at the game's most important position. And now, they have a little bit of a safety blanket here in Jack Miller.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. I think we take a step forward each day. I think obviously the install's starting to pile up. But today was the first day I felt like, okay, hey, we got quite a bit in. A few more mental errors today than maybe we need. But overall, I think those guys are doing really well. They're coming in extra. I see it sticking, a little bit of a whole approach. But it is sticking, and they're retaining information, and I see improvement. So pleased with that group.
What's that challenge been for Anthony and Jack as well? Trying to learn a new offense, but still.
No question. I think, there's a reason Jack's here, first of all. I think we anticipated potential issues. I think Jack comes across as a guy who has been in competition before, right? He's played in games before, right? And I think he does come across like it's not too big for him. He's comfortable. He's able to handle the good and the bad. I think he can make a play and then be the same guy the next play. He can make a mistake and be the same guy the next play. So there's some steadiness there that I appreciate. Certainly you can see that the ball comes out of his hand. He's got arm talent. He's accurate. And so far, he's picking it up pretty quick. So I think we made a good decision there, and we're glad Jack's on our team.
Now, we like to keep things positive here. I probably already lost a lot of the Gators just from those comments, but it ain't all bad. Certainly not when we're talking about in Gainesville. And one thing I wanted to highlight here, defensive coordinator Patrick Toney, getting to learn a little bit more about this guy. He's only 31 years old, but during his time at Louisiana with Billy Napier, the last 2 years calling the defensive plays, the team went 23-2, and what an incredible run. This guy comes from the Ron Roberts tree, who's now Baylor's defensive coordinator under Dave Aranda. He's coached with Alabama's defensive coordinator, Pete Golding. He has ties to Carl Scott, who's now an NFL position coach. But Toney may be young, but he's got ties to a lot of really good, well-respected defensive minds in college and NFL football. And I want to give this guy a shout out. I recently connected with him. I hope to have him on the show at some point this offseason. But if you're unfamiliar with this YouTube channel, CFB with JD, got to give this guy a follow. He has a really great breakdown on Patrick Toney and what his defense is going to look like in Gainesville and the creeper position. And, that's the thing. We're all worried about the quarterbacks and how the offense is going to look under Billy Napier. I'm more curious to know about this defense that, for years and years, when I think of elite Gator teams, hell, even under Steve Spurrier, we all know the fun and gun and all the records they were putting up, they couldn't get over the top. They couldn't win the national championship until they had that defensive presence, and that has been lacking clearly under the last several years under Todd Grantham. Now they hope to get that back under Patrick Toney, and what I love about his system, what little I know of it, is just kind of like Dave Aranda at LSU. They disguise what they're going to do. They come with the pressures, but unlike Todd Grantham, where they, the offense knows where it's coming from and it's coming early and often, in this defensive system, they love to use what's called a creeper, where they bring people up they make you think it's coming one way when it's coming the other, and it messes with the entire offensive game plan, from the quarterbacks, from the protection to everything out there. So, I'm really looking for this to be a huge upgrade for Florida's defense. And let's kick it over to Patrick Toney, who spoke, this was a couple days ago, on his defensive philosophy. And he really gets into, showing one look, but being really in another, disguising his run boxes. And I think the Florida Gators are going to be happy with their defense this season, which, let's be honest, that'll be a nice change of pace for them Gator fans.
Yeah, so, first and foremost, from a defensive standpoint, I always say we want to make the same things look different and different things look the same. I think in today's game, right, the person you got to make the game hard on is the trigger man, all right, and you got to be able to disguise and make him decide post-snap what the coverage is, where the strengths, weaknesses, where the coverage issues are. So, philosophically, we're going to try and put in a defense that poses a lot of problems to the quarterback post-snap. But overall, football is a game that's made a lot more difficult than it needs to be. It's going to come down to taking on blocks, getting off blocks, tackling, creating takeaways, and playing good situational football for us defensively. And then as a coaching staff, our number one goal, we're going to put our players in a sound concept. We're going to eliminate gray area, make it black and white so that they can play fast. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think it's pass first, but I think if you look at every run, there's a run-pass option on it, you know what I mean? So I think, what everyone's trying to do in today's game is get the ball handed off, into a positive numbered box, right? So you want to show population one way, maybe force them to throw the ball that way, or maybe not, and force them to hand it into a loaded box count. So, when you say that, I think the quarterback's making a decision on runs and passes every snap, not just passes.